time, Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and just like any other time, we have another amazing show lined up for y'all. And today, man, we're going to talk to a special guest. Her name is Dr. Deborah Heiser. She has a website, deborahheiser.com. But guess what? She has a book that we're going to be diving into as well today, The Mentorship Edge. Say that 10 times fast as you can. The Mentorship Edge. First and foremost, you have a busy schedule. So just for you to be able to take time to talk to us, you've been featured on TEDx. People know that as TED Talk. You've been on many different platforms. So I just want to say thank you for taking time to talk to us. You also are the CEO and founder of the Mentor Project. So first, thank you for your time today. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and thank you for having me on your show. I'm excited to be here.
I appreciate your time. So before we dive into the book, kind of give us a little bit for our audience who are watching and listening to us. Give us a little background of your professional career and how did you become who you are today?
Well, it was not a straight line journey, that's for sure. I I decided to become a psychologist because my grandmother was depressed, and I didn't know what depression was. I went to visit her in Florida when I was like 20, and she wasn't her fun self. She was the kind of grandma that you could go down there with no clothes and just wear hers because she was super stylish and fun. And when I went down to see her, she wasn't. And I asked the person at the independent living facility what was wrong. And they said, "Don't worry, we'll fix her." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they said, "Well, she's depressed." And I didn't even know what that meant. But they said, "Come when you come back again," because I used to visit her a few times a year. They said she'll be better. And when I went back, she was. So I said, "That's it. I want to be a grandma fixer." And so I changed my trajectory in college and went in for a psych major. And then I went into aging research because I really wanted to be able to fix grandmas all over, so that they wouldn't suffer from depression. So there I was studying everything no one ever wants to have or get and thinking I was making a mark on the world. And I went to um, a conference, and somebody at dinner said, "What do we have to look forward to as we get older?" And I was like, "Well, I'm doing all this work on depression and frailty and Alzheimer's." And the person said, "That's nothing I look forward to. What do we have to look forward to?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, what an aha moment." Like I really needed to pivot and find out what we had to look forward to. I was in my, it was like 10 years after my grandmother was diagnosed with depression. Here I was in my early 30s. And I said, I need to know what I need to look forward to. So I pivoted and started to look at our emotional trajectory, which is what we have to look forward to. So we're all very aware of our physical trajectory, which is that you have a steep incline in your abilities. And then early on, you can start to have a slow, steady decline. By the time you're in your 30s, you can notice a slow, steady decline. You might need reading glasses. You might be slower in running than you were before, these kinds of things. So that's scary to most of us. But what most don't know is that we have an emotional trajectory. And so that's what I dove into looking at. And our emotional trajectory starts at the same place at birth, but we get happier as we get older. I didn't know that. And so I really dove into midlife, which is the point where we really start to see ourselves getting happier. And there's an emotional stage called generativity, where we have a desire to give back to others without expecting anything in return. And that's volunteering, mentoring, and philanthropy. And I chose to look at mentoring because you give a piece of yourself to somebody else. And it's kind of like a form of immortality and a legacy. And it's how we feel good about ourselves and live longer, physically healthier and emotionally healthier lives when we engage in this in midlife. And so that was really my journey that got me to start to look at mentorship and how we can get involved in it. When I started the Mentor Project, no one thought that anyone would ever want to join. They were like, who is going to want to volunteer, especially top individuals? And we have really high level people. We have astronauts, the guy who was the father of the firewall, artists. We only have the top 1%. We started out with only 10 people, and everyone said, no one else is ever going to join. And within 6 months, a woman named Jen Snow started on board, and we went from 10 to 60, then to 80, then to 100. And we have a waiting list now. People are always asking to join and to become mentors because they feel irrelevant. They don't feel like they're productive. They feel like they imagine if you have all this information and expertise inside of you by the time you hit midlife and no one to show it to, you feel like you've just checked a lot of boxes for nothing. So the mentors all come on board and are really excited. We've just given away more than $3 million in mentoring hours, and that just this year alone. So the power of mentorship is really what excites me because it's something anyone from grandma to, a 4-star general can do. You don't need any training. We all, as we age, become experts in things, whether it's how to make the best holiday dinner, to culture, to value, to religion, to whatever. And so that's really my journey. I didn't mean to take up so much time with that, but that's my journey.
Nah, you take all the time you need because that's what it's all about. And mentorship is like almost free education. I mean, it's which one would you rather have? Go to school for a certain amount of years or have someone who's been doing it, professionally for their whole life? I mean, some of the things that mentors give to mentees is priceless. A lot of times it's field work instead of you know, the very narrow minded of a book,
Yeah.
exercise. Because let's talk on that point because being able to have that field experience, it kind of gives you maybe not complete shortcuts, but at least some things, pain points, if you will, that you can help mentees avoid or at least acknowledge and have a faster recovery process.
What I like, what I write about in the book is, and this is what's, mentorship is talked about so widely and broadly. I always joke and say that, I really think that my neighbor thinks he's mentoring his dog when he walks him because we use that word so often. Um, but if I define and I look at what makes for good mentoring and, from the mentor's perspective and the mentee's perspective, it's exactly the same. And so there's no special formula. What we really need are just 5 things. It's like ingredients, like making brownies. If I go to make brownies and I leave the sugar out, it'll look like brownies, but it won't taste like brownies. And the same as with mentorship. That's why so many people are eluded by what makes for good mentoring because they don't know all the ingredients necessarily. And it's simple. One is that you have to want to, if you're a mentor, you have to want to give back. If you don't want to give back and you're like Ebenezer Scrooge, you're not going to give back and you're not going to be a mentor. And if you are a mentee and somebody's offering you something that you don't want, you're not going to take it. It has to be a match where somebody is saying, I want to give you this knowledge, and somebody has to be there to receive it. So the mentor and mentee have to be in sync with that. So a lot of time in work, somebody doesn't want a mentor. They feel like this is a burden. I want to work, but I don't feel like mentoring. And so they're not wanting to give back. So it's not meshing very well with the mentee that may want to get information from them. The second thing is intrinsic motivation. If you're getting paid to mentor, you're not mentoring. It has to be outside of the workplace in a way that it matters to you outside of getting paid. And the example I give for that is I'll ask my students every semester, how many of you would like to volunteer at a soup kitchen, giving out food and beverage to hungry, thirsty people? And they all raise their hands. And then I say, okay, how about you go volunteer that time at Starbucks, giving out food and beverage to hungry, thirsty people? And they all say, no, I'm not going to do that. I should get paid to do that. And I say, but it's the same thing. But the feeling is very different. And if you work and you're being asked to volunteer your time, it feels like you're volunteering at Starbucks. It's that intrinsic motivation. You're expecting an extrinsic reward, which is money or praise or an award or something like that. So the intrinsic motivator has to really be what's the driving force. And for the mentee as well. They have to want to be a mentee. If their parents are making them, or if work says you better get a mentor or else, that's the same. Like if they don't, they might get in trouble or they might not get a promotion or a good performance evaluation. The next thing is it has to be a meaningful connection. How often have we all gone out to make friends and somebody comes along and we're like, it's not my person. They're a fine person. They're just not somebody we want to hang out with. Or you meet somebody that you're like, wow, I want to hang out with that person. That's great. There's no failure in connecting with a mentor. If it's not your person, if you don't feel meaningfully connected with that person, it's okay. That's not a failure. You have to want to be, just like a friend. If you meet somebody and they're not your person that you want to hang out with, that's not a failure. You're just not going to be friends with them. So that same principle has to happen for mentors and mentees. And finally, there has to be, well, not finally, the second to last thing is trust. If you're at work and you feel like if you have to be vulnerable and tell a boss or somebody above you that you don't know what you're doing, that means that you may feel like you can't open up to that person, or they are going to not give you a promotion. Maybe they'll fire you even. So you have to have trust. And likewise for the mentor, if they feel like the mentee is going to steal what they're doing or do something in a way that is not going to make them want to open up to them, that's not going to work. And finally, there has to be a goal. So mentoring isn't just chit-chatting. You have to have a goal that's going to change over time. It could change a million times, but the goal could be, I just want one session with somebody to learn something. Or it could be, I'd like a longer term thing, but there has to be a goal set there so that there can be a known between mentor and mentee feeling of accomplishment.
Once again, listen, I'm Refocused. We're talking to our special guest today, Dr. Deborah Heiser. You go to her website, it's deborahheiser.com, and make sure you grab her book, The Mentorship Edge, on Amazon. That's what we're talking about currently right now. When you look at the research, different types of research you've done throughout your professional career, what's some of the core ingredients do you see are effective for someone who is in that space of leadership and influence? Because yes, being mentor can be a great opportunity, but what are some of the key ingredients though that kind of makes a person ready to take that position?
Well, anybody can be ready, but some people just aren't. And I like to give the example of Ebenezer Scrooge. On paper, he was a guy who was ready. He was a self-made guy. He lived in a mansion. He had people taking care of his needs, but he was miserable and he never mentored anyone. He never gave back to anyone. And that's why he was miserable. It took him to have that aha moment to want to give back that he finally felt joy. So not everybody is almost everyone. We're built to mentor, but not everybody, there's outliers. So if you come across somebody who doesn't seem like they're there, then it's not you, it's them. So most leaders should be there. They should want to mentor. They should want a piece of themselves to live on in other areas of their work, the workplace, but not everybody will. And I think the important message to everyone is to say, listen, if you're looking for a mentor and somebody isn't being generative, they don't seem to want to give back, it's not you. That's not a failed mentoring relationship. That's not a mentoring relationship. That's all. And that's something to really look out for.
When people look at their personal lives versus their professional world, there are there are common grounds in both areas, but there also is, you keep your professional and your professional and your personal and your personal. When you look at mentees, how can they really apply the, if you will, not secret sauce, but just the core principles that mentors can provide for them, so that way they can translate it to the professional world and the personal world as well?
Oh, this one's a great one. So there's something called lateral mentoring, and this is a term that I coined a while back because I started to notice that when we engage in lateral mentoring, this is the most explosive form of mentorship. And if you are a mentee, someone who's saying, gee, I want to do things in my personal life and in my work life, you may be in a position where you say, you know what, I don't know that I want to go to somebody 2 levels above, or I want to do something, I want to combine things. The best way to go about it is that you can look to your left and you can look to your right, and you'll have a mentor there. Here's an example. I was a graduate student just starting out in work, and one of my fellow graduate students called me and she said, hey, Debbie, I know that you know how to do Kappa statistics. I'm in my new job. I have to do a project, and I'm probably going to get fired if I can't do this. She may not have been, but she felt like she was going to. So she was like, can you help me? So I sat on the phone with her and I walked her through how to do it. She already knew how to do stats. She just needed this one thing. She did her project and it worked out great. Now, in that case, I was her mentor. I had an expertise that was different than hers. How many times have I called on somebody to say, hey, get me through this jam at work or in my personal life? We all do that. We just don't realize that we're being mentored. But that's the most powerful thing there. She went on and did amazing in her job. And the first thing that she needed to accomplish, she did. And I've done that. I've relied on people to help me. So if you are young and you're a mentee, you're coming out, don't think of the workplace as your only place to have a mentor. And don't think it has to be some old person or somebody a few levels above you. It could be your friends. It could be people in different departments. Because when you're working to get something done, sometimes it's really great to make meaningful connections with people in other departments, because you can get more visible in different areas. And also, it does not bother a person to help a person in another department. They are eager to see you work out because you're no competition to them in terms of their own department. So it really removes the vulnerability issues that most of us have with regard to trust. Those walls come down, and we're able to really get a lot of the help that we need and want when we're, just starting out. So you may even look at somebody who's a couple levels above you in a different department to ask for, maybe you want the lay of the land. Maybe you want to know, how do I navigate this certain social aspect of this job? Or what can you give me guidance in what it looks like to move up the ladder in certain departments? Those are the things that make it easy to have those conversations, because there's no worry about trust.
When you see how mentorship has been able to be effective and help people bloom into something that they may not have been able to see themselves, but a lot of times it takes someone else on the outside to see the greatness in the person to help bring it out of them. For example, if someone who's an introvert and they're working up the corporate ladder, sometimes they might always self-sabotage and second guess themselves, not because they want to, but maybe it's because they've been used to doing that. When you see a mentor, if they ever have that kind of insight, what's some of the things that you've seen in the past where they've been able to help that person grow out of that phase and say, hey, like, don't put yourself in this box when you can literally color outside the lines?
The best case with that is lateral mentoring. The person I mentioned before, who was one of the fathers of the firewall, I have a couple of examples of how this works. So it's very hard if you feel intimidated by somebody above you. Say you're an introvert and you're intimidated by the person above you. That is difficult. It's doable, but it's difficult. But imagine if you could get what you wanted and needed from somebody that isn't above you. So here's an example that I have. Bill Cheswick, he's one of the fathers of the network firewall, was tasked at Bell Labs with creating the network firewall. And he was like, I don't know how to do this. So he's a very well-known engineer, very capable at a top place doing this work. And he's tasked with getting this done. He was able to take it as far as he could go, but he was like, I don't know what to do. So what he did was he had himself in his wheelie chair, in his office chair, and he wheeled himself down to Steve Bellevin And he said, "Hey, Steve, can you help me out with this?" Steve wasn't in his department. Steve was working on his own stuff. Steve had no skin in the game with what Bill was doing. But of course, everyone likes to help each other out, right? Somebody comes to you with a problem and you're not like, beat it. That's maybe a few people that do that, but avoid them. Most people want to help. So Steve was like that. He helped him through it. He said, "I'm going to show you what I know." And Bill got to learn that. And together they ended up creating the network firewall and writing the first book on network firewalls. Now, that Steve was his mentor in that case. He was his lateral mentor. Now, Bill never went to his boss with an issue. He never went to somebody above him with that. He avoided that whole area that you were talking about with a person who could self-sabotage. If a person went to their boss over and over and said, "I'm not sure how to do this, can you help me?" That could end up being self-sabotaging in a way. Go to somebody that, ask around and say, "What area of expertise am I lacking that I could go get from somebody else?" So it's really kind of looking and being aware of our surroundings. And when we see somebody who is lacking in something that we can help, we should be offering that help. It's being more aware. Mentorship is really being more aware of where can we be a mentor and where can we be a mentee, and accessing that, because that removes that self-sabotage component. You are not going to self-sabotage when you're working with somebody that you think is a friend or somebody that's a colleague that you're getting along with, that you really enjoy working with. You're going to just keep doing it because you enjoy that process. And that's what I would suggest to people is go remove the hierarchy from what you're doing and try to go laterally. Try to move what you're doing to looking to your left and looking to your right, because you're going to find more people there. You have a way fewer options when you're looking hierarchically than you do when you're looking at the broad expanse to your left and to your right.
Once again, listen, our Refocused Radio, watching this on Refocused Network, talking to our guest today, Dr. Deborah Heiser. Go to her website. It is deborahheiser.com, and make sure you go on Amazon and get the mentorship edge that we've been discussing. When you see the impact you've been able to make with your professional career and also with your personal traits, because it takes a personal person inside to make an impact on the outside world. And what I want to get to is that a lot of times we hear this famous song, look at the man in the mirror, because if you want to make a change, you got to change him first. How much does that make an impact to a person, especially a mentee, that can one day grow into a mentorship position where he's able to or she's able to not just leave their expertise and creativity for someone to embrace, but also do it in a way where it's like, this is very authentic. I actually got to live this process, and you're not getting a cookie cutter answer.
It's addictive. It's like an addiction. When you start to mentor others, you can't stop. It feels so good. I'll give you an example. I just half an hour got off of a Zoom with a woman named Dina. She lives in Kenya. I've never met her in person, but she's been my mentee for a couple years now. And she has been growing and growing in her capabilities. She came as an undergrad and, was looking to have just some experience in terms of what could she do with her undergrad, how could she move around in terms of her major. It turns out that she's now the coordinator for the Mentor Project Kenya. She now has a whole bunch of mentees who are college students who are getting mentorship. And it's because of her. She's now the lead peer mentor. She's organizing them all. She is now making a mentor project in Kenya. And to see that, she has been getting guidance from me and from others at the Mentor Project and seeing how it works. And now she's doing it. She's a young woman, and here she is taking on a big responsibility with people in another country based on what she's learned. There's no better feeling than that, really and truly, than being able to see someone else take some knowledge that you've given to them, some ideas, and they've been able to incorporate it into how they think and make it their own and run away with it. That happens over and over and over again. And how can you stop once you've seen that once? It's almost impossible.
Well, once again, you've been listening on Refocused Radio and watching us online on Refocused Network. Been talking to our special guest, Dr. Deborah Heiser. Go to her website, deborahheiser.com. Make sure you grab the book, The Mentorship Edge, on Amazon. Can't believe time is already going fast. But before we let you go, one thing I want to say too is being able to have such a very impressive resume yourself and portfolio, being able to be with the top 1%ers of the world, if you will. If you had a young person listening to this or watching us and they want to bloom themselves, they want to bloom where they were planted. Maybe they're planted in 9 to 5 right now, or maybe they are ambitious and they're considering jump into entrepreneurship. When you look at the core ingredients that helps your personal and professional life, what would you pass on to the young person? What's some of the maybe North Star traits that they can attend to as they are making progress with their life?
The biggest thing you can do is make connections. And, networking is a part of that, but making sure that you're actually connecting with a person so that you know a little bit about them. What is it that they do? What is it that they enjoy? What is it that they like? Because one day they may be a mentor for you, and one day you may be a mentor for them. If you're looking at every person as somebody that you can connect with, whether you think they're the most fabulous person or not, if you look at them a little bit more deeply than I'm here in the moment with this person, and you just get to know a little bit more about them, that is going to carry you really, really far.
Well, like I always want to say to our guest, Dr. Deborah Heiser, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.